welcome back to another episode of DNA Live. My name is Jeff Wright. I'm here with Scott Allen. How are you, Scott?
Jeff, good to be with you. I'm well, thank you.
Glad to have you, Scott. Glad to share this hour with you. If you're joining us for the first time, please say hello in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. If you're a regular, give us a greeting as well. We'd love to interact. And we love seeing you in the comments. We really appreciate the community we have. And we're happy to have you with us today. If you do not know what the Disciple Nations Alliance is about, then you can visit our website at disciplenations.org. We have plenty of resources to help equip you with a biblical worldview, understand how to apply that biblical worldview in every sphere of influence that you find yourself in every area of your life. And one of our main tools we use to do that is Coram Deo. It's a free online biblical worldview course that you can take, and that's available at coramdeo.com. We're a little slim behind the scenes today, but I believe Sean is with us, and he will link those in the comment section. Anything else you'd like to add, Scott, before we get rolling?
No, but we do have some guests we might want to mention at some point, Jeff, coming up next week and the week after.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead. Do the teaser early, and we can mention.
Yeah. Really excited to have a couple of leading voices. We're going to continue discussion on this topic of ideological social justice as a worldview. We like to approach this from the level of worldview and theology. And we have a couple of really special guests that help us understand it better. Number one, Tom Askell, who is one of the leading pastors in Florida, Southern Baptist pastor in Cape Coral, Florida, who has been a real leading voice kind of in the church in the West in terms of speaking out for biblical truth and justice. Real leader in this effort. And so we're going to be really honored to have him join us and have him share what he's been doing and how he got involved in this. And then the week after, Dr. Wayne Grudem, who was kind enough to endorse my book and is really one of America's, really one of the world's preeminent theologians, wrote his famous systematic theology.
Helped with the ESV translation, I believe.
That's right. Yeah. And Dr. Grudem, we're very kindred spirits with him because he's a guy who likes to think theologically about everything, business and politics and education. And so he likes to, it's called applied theology or practical theology. How do the basic biblical truths shape the way we understand everything else? And so that's very much part of what we do at the DNA. And Dr. Grudem is really just top notch in that area. So we're going to be really excited to hear from him and ask him some questions. So
great introductions there, Scott. I'm looking forward to that. So we're calling this part 2 because maybe a month ago, thereabouts, you were on and we started talking about what you refer to as ideological social justice in your new book. This is available on Amazon. It's been out for
about a week.
A week and
over a week, yeah.
And in that time, it's still sitting at #1 in new releases for religious studies.
Religious studies, yeah.
Yeah. So congratulations on that. Why social justice is not biblical justice. You can get a paperback or a Kindle copy at Amazon. We can link that in the comments. I think Sean will do that for us. So we had part 1. We talked a little bit about what this is and the differences between this as a worldview and the biblical worldview. And if you want to watch that video, it's in our video section here on this Facebook page. And I know for a fact it's actually parked on our YouTube channel, which has not really debuted yet, but very soon, if you prefer YouTube over Facebook, you will be able to watch most of these videos on YouTube as well. So that one's already in the hopper, ready to go, and we'll be launching those pretty soon. So I encourage you to go back and watch that at some point, but to get rolling today, I think we're going to dive right in to where we left off. So we had talked about how ideological social justice differs from the biblical worldview and how it understands ultimate reality, how it understands human identity, how it understands morality, good and evil, how we would overcome that evil, what is true. I mean, we just ran the gamut there. And there are very stark differences, right?
Absolutely.
So there's plenty of worldviews out there, Scott, that differ from biblical worldview, that do not come to the same conclusions, do not start with the same presuppositions, and do not come to the same conclusions. I'm not really worried about traditional African religions where I'm sitting right now in Phoenix, Arizona. But you, in the promotion for the book, within the book, and in various other places, you've called this the biggest worldview threat of our generation. So why is this the one that you see as such a threat?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So many reasons, actually. I think maybe the first thing that comes to my mind in terms of this is a threat is that so much of the West, and our good friend Vishal Mangawati is just such an expert in this, but so much of the West has been shaped over millennia by biblical presuppositions about what does it mean to be human, about human purpose, about the dignity of life, about justice. That's not in any way to say that the West is somehow the New Jerusalem or heaven on earth. It's not. It's we live in a fallen world, but nations have been discipled, and many of the nations of Western Europe and in the United States over many years have been discipled by a biblical worldview, shaped significantly by these presuppositions. They have affected the way people think, whether they're Christians or not, for a long time. And because they're true, because they're good, they've held together a society. They've laid a foundation for basic things like the rule of law. They have prevented widespread corruption. They've allowed largely, free, flourishing societies, not perfect, but largely free, flourishing, pluralistic societies. Now, that has been an eclipse for a long time, the biblical worldview. I think what we're seeing here with ideological social justice is really the first worldview to kind of raise up in the West as a significant kind of alternative, broadly speaking, to the biblical worldview in the West for a lot of people, a lot. And the problem with that is that as you just said, Jeff, it's fundamentally different, significantly, from a biblical worldview in terms of its understanding of human nature, its understanding of truth, power, of epistemology, and just about everything. And you're going to inevitably get a very different kind of society when you replace one worldview with another. And what we're seeing in terms of the social ramifications of this worldview are really worrisome. It's creating a lot of division, a lot of hostility. There is no sense of forgiveness or mercy that comes out of this worldview. There isn't really an upholding of truth. And we'll talk more about that. So what I'm concerned about is that if this really continues to replace at kind of the foundational level a lot of these biblical presuppositions that have grounded America and the West, things are just simply going to continue to fall apart. I don't think there's anything that's going to allow us to cohere coming from these worldview presuppositions of ideological social justice.
So, we all have flawed lenses through which we see. You say that this is the first major threat. Is that because of how comprehensive it is? Because, as a Christian, I would like to think I have this perfect biblical worldview. I do not. I borrow from a materialistic worldview. I have been influenced by secular culture, right? And so it's this, so we've had all that in the mix for a long time, but you're saying that this one is on a different level.
Yeah, I think it is on a different level, Jeff. The way I see the kind of the flow of worldview history in the West is that Christianity, the Judeo-Christian worldview, has been waning for some time now. Since the Enlightenment, you've had, in Darwinian theory, you've had this kind of aggressive secularism that's come in that denies that there's a God. We're all just accidents of this evolutionary process in this purposeless universe. That's been out there for a long time. Now, the problem with secularism is that it was a negation of a religious worldview that gave meaning to people's lives.
Yeah.
So it left people unsatisfied, and I would say it really couldn't replace at a foundational level the Judeo-Christian worldview. It just could deny it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Negation.
Yeah. And
So
then
it was
a point.
very, it was,
Well, I was
yeah,
going
it
to say a
very
point that
dissatisfying for people. You couldn't build a life on it, basically.
it's hard to interrupt on Zoom sometimes. I was going to say the point you often make is that as it's negating it, well, we always see in practice that you actually end up borrowing back from the truth you were trying to negate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now what we've got with ideological social justice isn't just a negation of the biblical worldview, fully formed worldview, or even a religion. I mean, it really is a religious worldview that is coming in now as a full-fledged replacement for Judeo-Christian worldview. The closest you've seen in the West to it historically is Marxism, because Marxism really was, in many respects, a religious worldview. And there's a whole lot, of course, overlap between Marxism historically and traditionally and ideological social justice. So it's a fully formed worldview. It gives people a sense of meaning and purpose. That's the big thing that secularism didn't give people. You can't know meaning in a secular worldview. You're just a clump of atoms, right?
Right.
But this gives you meaning. You can fight for justice in this, and they have an understanding of justice that's been redefined. It gives you a purpose, gives you something to do, gives you meaning. And so in that sense, it's quite a threat. I would also say this, Jeff, it's a threat right now because it's so advanced now in our society. And I think this has kind of taken many of us by surprise. I know it actually took me by surprise when I started getting my head around it, 4 or 5 years ago. I had kind of thought, and I'll just tell you a bit of my own personal story here. I went to a university, a liberal, secular, liberal arts college in Oregon, studied history in the 1980s. And at that time, that university was heavily influenced by Marxism and Marxist presuppositions. And so I was influenced as a young Christian by those ideas.
How long was your hair? Give or take.
Yeah. Well, I came out, honestly, I was quite Marxist coming out of my university days. I really was. I didn't identify as a Marxist. I wouldn't have as a Christian, but the thinking, the patterns of thought that kind of made up my worldview were heavily influenced by those presuppositions. Now, I met Darrow after that. Darrow was the one that really discipled me in a biblical worldview and kind of helped me to sort out my own thinking on this. And then shortly after that, the Berlin Wall fell, communism collapsed in the former USSR. I kind of, in my own mind, I thought, well, that thing's been kind of put into the grave and buried, now, and that whole Marxist thing. I wasn't that, I recognized that you still had the Communist Party in China, there was still North Korea, you had Venezuela, Cuba. But I thought, this is really kind of now, we've gone past this. This is now in the rearview mirror and we're moving past this Marxism. What I didn't understand is that I was wrong, that thing that I experienced in universities in the 80s just grew and grew and grew in its strength and momentum in the universities. And then, it spilled out of the universities. And now it undergirds almost every major area of the culture, whether it's entertainment, big sports, as we're seeing now, business, big business, particularly tech, a lot of our politics, justice, you name it. These presuppositions are right now at the foundation level in so many areas of our culture in a way that they weren't in the 80s, even the 90s. And so we're really advanced with this thing now. It's really embedded. We're all shaped by it as a result. We've all kind of absorbed these ideas because we all participate in the culture, and the culture is heavily shaped by these ideas. So all that to say, that's another reason why I see this as a real threat, because it is, again, this is not the biblical worldview by any stretch. It uses biblical words and language very often, but it is not biblical.
So you said that you wouldn't identify as Marxist, though you had very Marxist thinking. You just said that we're all impacted by it. We're all living part of it because of how deeply embedded it is. Unless you're part of kind of the DNA school of thought, and there's plenty of other peers out there as well, but DNA is pretty special in a lot of ways in the way we teach. Unless you're in this school of thought, unless you nerd out on worldview like we do, and I say that endearing, nerd's a very endearing word for me, but a lot of people don't think on the level of worldview, right? And so I think the experience that you just shared could resonate with somebody if they really understand what you're saying, that you're looking through a set of lenses that you don't even know you have on.
That's the way worldviews work, Jeff,
Right.
as you know. I mean, we all have worldviews. Nobody can opt out of a worldview, and worldviews are what allow you to live your life. You have to have a view of the world in order to just simply live your life. You have to have some kind of presupposition about what is real, what is true, who am I, what's purpose, what's meaning. And a lot of people, they don't think about these things. They are presuppositions. They are assumptions. In other words, they absorb them from the culture. They get them from parents from the time they're in the cradle. They get them through teachers or schools, through friends, significantly, through media and entertainment, through novels, you name it. So we are all kind of enculturated into the worldview of our culture, the dominant worldview, to a certain degree, without trying. It's not like you have to go to school and study. You
Right.
just get it.
Yeah.
It's the lenses that you have on your face. So that's the thing. Now, so many people have on these lenses of ideological social justice. They couldn't tell you much about that worldview in terms of where it came from or what its basic, kind of historical background is, or the basic presuppositions. They're just assumed. It's the questions that nobody's asking in some ways that are the most dangerous questions, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. And when you're on the level of presupposition, like you say, you don't have to think of it, but also on the level of presupposition, because it's where it all starts, it's mutually exclusive to other presuppositions. I mean, that's the driving out part that you had mentioned earlier.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I think I'd like to maybe take 2 minutes, Scott, to talk about where this book came from. You had started writing a project called 12 Words. And I think as we're using the word social justice through this whole thing, which sounds amazing. Justice is great. We want justice. And you talk about how this ideology is using Christian language. Again, all these things sound good. This could be confusing to somebody joining us for the first time, not really up in this conversation yet. Can you speak a few minutes on the importance of words, on the importance of language? I know you're a quote guy. If you have some of your favorite quotes there, I think there's some great ones on this that you've shared, but just the building block of culture that is words.
Yeah. Well, let me even step back one step before that, Jeff, and just talk about discipling nations. We are the Disciple Nations Alliance.
Yeah.
And so I just want to just kind of cover some ground that's really basic to our understanding of what Christian mission is all about.
Okay.
And that is that the mission of the church isn't just merely to get people saved and get them to heaven, as important and as essential as that is. And I know I got to be careful here because some people go, what are you talking about? I'm in no way minimizing evangelism, salvation. That's essential. What many Christians don't understand is that our mission is much bigger than that. It's that we would begin to influence and shape cultures to reflect biblical truth, reality, because in doing so, we're honoring God and we're loving our neighbors, because it's only biblical truth and love that leads to healthy, flourishing societies. And that's what God wants. He is the creator of the nations. He's the Lord of the nations. This is his world. And he wants not just to get people saved and out of this world, but he wants to see the whole world, every system, every structure redeemed and reflecting his truth. So the mission of the church involves us as Christians being engaged in every area of society and influencing it and shaping it, towards biblical truth. Now, that understanding of mission is something that evangelical Christians and Bible-believing Christians have understood at different times in our history. Certainly the early church, I think, understood this quite clearly. Go and make disciples of all the nations, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded, Jesus said. And so the early church understood this, and that is why when it interacted with the Roman world, it didn't just get Romans saved out of the Roman world, it actually changed the Roman Empire's culture so that it had to, it was fundamentally transformed. So the early church understood it. I think after the Protestant Reformation, it was kind of recovered, this understanding of discipling nations. And you saw it, for example, in the work of John Wesley and many people coming out of the Reformation. And it's something that we believe in deeply here at the DNA. Let me talk about words now. One of the ways that we influence culture, probably more significantly than any other way, it's when I talk about influencing culture, a lot of Christians go, oh, you mean electing Christian politicians, right? That's what it means to influence. We got to get a Christian president, and then we'll really make a difference. We need Christians in politics, but that's such a small part of what it means to disciple nations. And in fact, I would argue that as important as that is, it's not the biggest part.
And we also teach in the DNA that by the time a law is made, it's already reflective of the culture that the law has been created in.
Exactly.
Let me write the songs for the country, not its laws.
Yeah. One of the most important ways that nations are influenced according to biblical truth is simply through the upholding and the passing on of biblical definitions to words and language. And when I say biblical, I mean true. In other words, in our postmodern time, we've lost the concept of objective truth. So this idea of true definitions, people go, what are you talking about? These words can be defined in any way people want to define them. And that's not true. God has the privilege of defining words and language in his word in a way that is true and objective for all people and all cultures and all times. And these words and language matter more than almost anything else in shaping culture. This is a really major truism that we teach in the DNA. If you want to change culture, you change words and language. And that works in a positive way to shape a culture according to biblical truth, and it also works in a negative way to lead cultures away from a biblical worldview. The power of words cannot be underestimated because God he calls himself the Word. Jesus is the Word. He created the universe through the power of his spoken word. And we, as Darrell often says, we shape cultures because we're made in God's image. We use words and language to shape cultures, to build culture. Words really matter. They're very important. And especially, really, I would say, incredibly powerful biblical words like love, like compassion, like man, male, female, like justice. These words really matter. Now, what happens is that if somebody wants to change culture, they go after those definitions and they try to change those definitions. What Christians have to do is we have to be really on our guard, and we have to say, oh, those definitions are being changed from a biblical to a non-biblical definition. We have to defend biblical truth. We have to defend biblical definitions. So that's a huge part of what it means to disciple nations that many people don't consider. They just, we use words, but we don't consider the power of words, and we don't often think about definitions in the way we ought to. Yeah. I hope that's not too abstract.
No, but it goes back to what we were saying before too, in that words become building blocks for entire narratives as well.
Exactly.
And then you're believing the narrative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if that is a little too abstract, again, nerding out on DNA for the past 2.5 years, not too abstract for me. But if you're listening, if you're watching, we have a free resource, quorumdeo.com. It is free for you. You sign up with your email address, and you can take a 12-lesson course at your own pace. You can take it in a group. First 6 lessons really focus on what is worldview, what is the biblical worldview, the transforming story of God and the power of story. And I think that could really help anyone watching or listening now to better understand just life in general. It's a great tool for that. So
Jeff, just really quick before you ask that next question, I wanted to circle back. I wrote the 12 Words Project was, and we're still working on this, but we're looking at 12 keywords from the scripture that are critical building blocks for healthy, flourishing nations that come from the Bible. We're looking at these 12 words, and I started in on that project and got to the word justice, and I really thought I've got to just pause on this word justice, because in our culture right now, it's been significantly under attack and significantly redefined in the modern imagination. And even Christians, I think, have gone along with the redefinition. They just hear the word justice and kind of assume that they know what it means, but it's been radically redefined. And I start the book right away. I mean, in fact, you can get the book just for 1 page if you want, but I start on page 1 of the book, and I list out these definitions, what justice is biblically in a very concise way, and then I list out how it's been redefined. And anyways, I don't need to read that right now, but I want people to be really clear that we have the same word here that we're talking about, but we have very different definitions for it increasingly. And it's the redefinition of justice that now is shaping the culture. So.
Yeah. No, I think what's been really enlightening to me, I even mentioned it in our little book launch thing we did last week, but just a filter for me, right, is the word justice. If I'm standing holding up a sign today with somebody with the word justice on it, the person next to me is holding up another justice sign. Tomorrow, if we're talking about reproductive justice, we may very well be on opposite sides of the street, because for me, it means defending the life of the unborn and using the exact same word, wholeheartedly believing it. The other person believes it means the right of a woman to murder a baby in her womb.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
and it blows my mind. But yeah. Okay. So anyhow, on that light note, ideological social justice. I think you've laid the case out that it's a whole movement. It's a comprehensive worldview on the level of religion. And I think we did touch pretty nicely just now on sort of what it means to disciple nations.
Right.
You think that ideological social justice has been very, very successful, very aggressive in its missional outreach, if you will.
Exactly.
Why is that?
Yeah. Let's talk about that, Jeff. Yeah, that's really an important thing to discuss. Not all religions are missional, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You can think of like maybe the Amish, for example, which is a Christian sect that is in Pennsylvania, Ohio. They're pretty content they're pretty content to just kind of practice their own particular beliefs, and they just kind of want to be left alone to do that. They're not really out there trying to make everyone else wear black clothes and black hats and drive buggies. That's not what they're trying to do. And you can think of a lot of other examples of this around the world, different religious sects they're just kind of content to be left alone to practice what they want to practice. That is not the case with ideological social justice. It is a global missionary religion. It It has a vision to disciple nations using our language. It has a vision to really see cultures shaped and formed. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about how that is being done. You know, how it's actually pretty incredible, because in a fairly short amount of time, they've had incredible success at deeply shaping cultures, not just in the West, but around the world. So I've actually been really interested to look at that. Like, how are they doing that? How do they do in a way exactly what we want to do as Christians, but do it so powerfully and so effectively? So got several ideas on that. Maybe I'll just share a few with you, Jeff, and we can talk a little bit about it. First of all, I would say that the ideas, these presuppositions, this basic worldview, it grew out of Marxism, and I won't go into all of the history, but it basically came to the United States through a group of academics that colloquially went by the name the Frankfurt School, men like Max Horkheim and Marcuse and many others. They were Marxist. Their interest was in trying to understand why Marxism was not as effective in changing in a revolutionary way, changing the United States and the West as it was in Russia. And so they were coming up with new ideas and new theories on why that was the case. Anyways, it came to the United States. It was in the universities and the academy. That's where the phrase critical theory came in. But they said, if we want to change this culture and really bring down capitalism and change the basic warp and woof of Western culture, we have to go after some of these key drivers of the culture. And probably number one on their list was education. They were very intentional and very deliberate about two things. Number one, teacher training. And so today, a lot of the schools of teacher training and education in the West are really hothouses for teaching this worldview. They've really been taken over and really do a lot to shape the way young teachers that are going into classrooms in K through 12 and in universities as well think. And they just are absorbing this worldview. And today you see it in terms of curriculum. So we've got explicitly ideological social justice curriculum, particularly on the level of LGBTQ and race, coming into our schools, our public schools. Now Black Lives Matter, for example, has curriculum that is being aggressively promoted into public schools and being adopted. The same with this 1619 project of the New York Times. So they're very aggressive in terms of education. And you don't just see this in the United States. Significantly, you see this around the world. And I know a lot of our DNA friends, Stephen Longa, for example, in Uganda, started wondering where do we get all of this LGBTQ rights, same-sex marriage, there is no male-female binary, all this education coming from the West. Why do we start seeing that now coming into the curriculum that's being used by public schools in Uganda? Exactly the same thing in places like Colombia, South America, Mexico, you name the country, it's coming in. And that's because there's a very aggressive intentional strategy on the part of the people who are drivers of this religion, if you will, to spread it around the world. They've got a missionary zeal, they've got money they're putting into it, and they use education. That's not by any means the only thing that they're using, but education is a key driver. I just will say this, Christians used to get that a couple hundred years ago. And that's why the Puritans, for example, in our country, founded Yale and Harvard. They knew that we had to really begin to shape culture through education. And so we had to establish world-class universities. And not only did that happen in the United States, that happened in China, that happened in Africa, that happened in India. And we used to do that. We used to have exactly the same vision. But for different reasons I don't want to get into right now, the Bible-believing church kind of lost that vision and abdicated that responsibility for education. And those vacuums in those universities were quickly filled by people that had other worldviews. So anyways, education is a huge one. And the thing that makes education so significant, Jeff, is because once people come out of their education, out of K through 12 in the university, they go into every area of society, right? They go into business, arts, you name it, law, and they bring those presuppositions with them. So if you can shape education, you can influence so many areas of society. It's exactly what we've seen with this.
Any other ones you want to?
Yeah, so education, I would say this. Another thing that I have here is, I jotted a few notes down about this, but it's very coercive. Now, when we, as Christians, when we're trying to influence the culture, we're not coercive, right? We're not imposing anything, we're proposing, right? That's our style, that's our, there's freedom, right? There's freedom to believe or not believe, and we, biblically, would never try to impose or force somebody to believe something. We wouldn't even use coercive tactics. Not true with ideological social justice. It uses coercive tactics, and one of the most coercive ones that it uses is what's called political correctness or speech codes. So, for example, if you say things today like all lives matter, or if you say things like we should judge people on the content of their character and not on the color of their skin, or if we should say there's fundamental biological differences between men and women, you can expect to be shamed or challenged or seen as bigoted, or those are not the politically correct kinds of things that you can say nowadays. So people are feeling cautious about saying those kinds of things. Here's the deal, Jeff. Every single one of the things I just said is true. They're all true. But the new worldview creates a kind of a culture environment where you're kind of shamed or, made to feel like you're on the wrong side of these issues if you say those kinds of things. So that's an effective way. Of course, redefining words, we just talked about this. They take words and change the definitions. Words like justice, words like equality, diversity, racism, you can go down the list. Every one of these words, there used to be in our culture common understandings, I would say widespread common understandings of what these words meant, largely shaped by the Bible, especially in the United States, because we have this history of Webster and his dictionary back to 1860 or 1828, and he purposely defined words from the scriptures. And so we have a history of having an understanding of words and language that come from the Bible. That lasted for a long time. Now these words are being contested in a way that they've never been before. I don't think many people are aware of that strategy. So it's very subtle, and it kind of just undermines things. Another big one, Jeff, is the whole tactic of using narratives. I've written quite a bit about this. Narratives are stories that have some basis in truth, usually, some often very small basis in truth, but they're painting this bigger picture of what is right, what is wrong, who's good, who's bad, based on some small amount of truth, but ultimately a lot that isn't true. And so they'll cast everything in terms of the narrative, and if you try to challenge the narrative by saying, hey, I don't think that's fully factual, or there's some truth that you're not accepting into that, you can expect to be pushed back against pretty severely. Let me give you just one example. There's so many examples I could give of this, but a big one right now is just the narrative of our own history in the United States, right? So the social justice movement or religion is really invested in casting a narrative of our history as one completely defined by systemic racism at the very DNA, the very founding of our nation. We're a racist, bigoted nation, and those bigoted, racist ideas, and not just racist, but we're also homophobic and we are misogynistic. That's baked into who we are fundamentally. That defines us fundamentally. Okay, is there some truth there? Yeah, there's some truth that we've struggled with these things from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Is that narrative an accurate picture of who we are as a nation? Not even close. There's so much more to be said about the nation than that narrative portrays. But everything, if you try to challenge the narrative, if you try to say, hey, there's a bigger picture here, or that's not factual, or that's not accurate, or here's some facts and evidence that counter that narrative, you'll be shut down. There's just incredible pressure to shut you down. So many examples of that. So there's a lot of kind of levers of coercion that get used to kind of further this particular worldview. Those are just some, Jeff.
Well, yeah, to take it, to keep the cycle moving, I was just reading how teachers are now using 1619 project curriculum in their classes, right? And so
exactly,
the indoctrination continues and so on and so on. Wow. Okay. So, Scott, you are president of Disciple Nations Alliance. You've been on board since the beginning. Mission to equip the church. We do that globally. We care about the global church. We have constituents on every continent. We get to a global forum. There's 150 people there from countless countries. Well, you could count them if you wanted to, right? I think the last one we had 22 countries represented, right? And that was partly we couldn't get a bunch more because of some visa issues. We're all over the place. Why, as the president of the DNA, with this global focus, do you have such a heart issue for this right now? How is this impacting the world beyond the U.S.?
Two reasons, Jeff. Number one, just by virtue of the fact that the United States and the West exerts a lot of influence around the world, and increasingly we live in a global society. So it's not possible to kind of wall off or segment different countries and cultures in the way that it used to be even 10 years ago, much less 100 years ago. We live in this age of the internet. Ideas are traveling all over the world, influencing people all over the world. We live in this very globalized time. And this worldview is coming out of the West, but using the levers and the tools of media, entertainment, social media. It's spreading aggressively all over the world. I mentioned education, and we've had a lot of our DNA colleagues and friends around the world challenge me. I remember I was in Colombia when all of this ideological social justice curriculum, particularly on issues of sex and marriage, started coming into their public schools. And Christians became aware of it, even though it was done very subtly and in an underhanded way. When those curricular changes happened in those countries, it was done really under the table. But many Christian leaders down there, many of our own friends, became aware of it, and they started raising the alarm about it. And they started wondering, where is this coming from? Where are these ideas? Who's behind this? And they traced that question back to the West, the United States in particular. And then they turned to me and they said, Scott, you're the president of an organization called the Disciple Nations Alliance. You live in the United States. What are you doing about this? This is coming from your country.
You had one job, Scott. One job.
I've been why are you down here in Colombia? You need to be up there, something about all this stuff that's coming out of your country and impacting nations all over the world. That I will say had a real impact on me. And I've heard now from more than one person that this is having impact around the world. And so it's not just something that is impacting the United States.
Yeah. You said two things, I believe. Was that the first of two?
I forgot the second one.
Okay. But that first one. Okay. So we've got about 15 minutes. I have one or two more questions.
Sure.
We can maybe get some questions in the comments in case we have enough time. But if we don't, you can always email us at info@disciplenations.org if you have any questions. If you want to hash anything out, we'd be happy to talk to you. If you want to get connected with somebody locally, we can probably help with that as well, at least within the same language group. If English isn't your first language, email us info@disciplenations.org. And in the meantime, though, leave some in the comments if we have some time. I'm sure Sean will share those with me. Okay, so Scott, what is the Christian response to this? I'm the everyday Christian, right?
Okay.
Packing our lunch bag and getting to work. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah. That's really the bottom line question. How do we respond to this? And I do think it's just so important right now for Christians to be engaged and responding to this, not be passive, not on the sidelines. I know there's a lot of pressure to stay on the sidelines because you can get in real trouble. You can lose your job. I mean, there's real consequences to be paid when you start pushing back against this orthodoxy in the culture right now. But if we, out of a love for our nation and love for our neighbors, because we recognize this is such a dangerous and divisive ideology, we really do have a duty, I believe, to do what we can to push back. And I would say that there's many ways we can do that. Number one, I think it's just look at the tactics that I talked about, okay? Number one is words. We have to be really aware of what the biblical definitions of words are, and we have to be aware of how they differ from the way that these words have been redefined in terms of ideological social justice worldview. And we have to uphold the true definitions in our own lives, in our own circles of influence. And that means sometimes speaking up, means speaking out when these words are being used in a way that's been redefined. I think another thing, Jeff, is I'm a believer that the world ultimately is divided between light and dark, truth and lies, and there's a battle between those two things. That's what we live in. And the darkness advances through lies and deception. Satan, who is ultimately behind that, is the father of lies. On the other side, Jesus is the truth, and the truth sets people free. And so ideological social justice is rooted in lots of deceptions, lots of lies. At its foundation, it uses lies and deceptions. And again, I talked about false narratives. That's just one example, or largely false narratives. We can't traffic in false narratives. If somebody comes up to you, for example, and says, the police are fundamentally racist and they've declared open season on young black men. The police force is the greatest threat to young black men in the United States or the West. That's a narrative. A lot of people believe that narrative. As Christians, we don't just go, yep, that's right. We go, well, let's see, is that true? So we have to look at whether that particular narrative and many more are actually true. Is it true that young black men in the United States are being, have a greater threat from the police than from anything else? And when you look and you try to examine truth and facts, and you see that there are truth and facts that counter those narratives, you have to speak up. We have to be on the side of truth. At the end of if you move towards truth, at the end of that road is Jesus himself. So we have to always be moving towards Christ. He is the author of all truth. He is the truth. So we have to be people of truth. We cannot go along with false narratives. And I would also say we have to be able to not go along with kind of being cowed by political correctness. If somebody comes up to you and says, you cannot say all lives matter. That's wrong. That's insensitive. I know, but it's still true. And so, we have to be just willing to say these things are true. It's true that we should not judge people on the basis of their skin color, but rather on the content of their character. The reason that's such a powerful statement by Martin Luther King is because it's true. It's biblical. That's the way God judges us. He judges us based on our actions and our character, not on our skin color. So it's not politically correct to say it, but it's true and it's good. It's going to lead to a much better kind of society than the alternative, which is what ideological social justice promotes. Everything is about skin color and character doesn't matter, essentially.
Well, so the thing I was just thinking when you were saying that is, we haven't used this term, I don't think, in this hour at all, but it's under this ideological social justice is the identity politics. And I think a difficult thing to navigate in this conversation, Scott, is that you are, because of the way these identity politics are playing out right now, because of the way people are identifying and hanging so much on X, Y, Z in their identity, when you are refuting those things, it's like an attack on their identity. And so then there's this whole new navigation that enters in of, well, okay, I love this person, I value truth, and I want to be compassionate. And so like there's this, you're mixing it all up. And
well, I think the truth is that people fundamentally, their identity isn't their gender preference.
Right.
It's not their skin color. It is the fact that they are created by God in His image with incredible dignity, value, and worth, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their male-female gender, regardless of their gender identity. And so, the worldview of ideological social justice denies that. It says it doesn't believe in the God of the Bible. It ultimately is an atheistic kind of religion, but it says, no, I am defined by these other things. And Christians, we need to say, that is just not true. Those other things may shape you or may influence you. They do, but they don't define you. So we have to speak biblical truth. Again, because it's the only loving thing. It's the only way that people are going to be helped. I would say one more thing to Jeff. I was really struck by something I read recently. One of the ways that this ideology has been spreading is aggressively. I mentioned education and other things. It's also spreading aggressively through human resource departments and businesses and things called diversity training. And maybe a lot of you that are listening to this have gone through these diversity training seminars or classes. Sometimes they've been required from your university or your place of business. This is very common nowadays, and these seminars very often are just training sessions for the basic presuppositions of this ideology. They're really training people in a worldview, this particular worldview of ideological social justice. Anyways, this guy had gone through one of these training seminars, and he recognized that this isn't really about diversity. We can all agree that, we should try to have more diversity in the workplace and whatnot. This is really about basic presuppositions about the world. These are really religious kind of presuppositions. And so he had the courage to say, listen, I don't think it's appropriate for you as a business to be using the dollars of the business to indoctrinate the employees against their will in a religion. In America, we have religious freedom. So you're free to believe those basic presuppositions, but you're not free to use power or coercion to make me believe that. And I just think that's really smart. And I think that's important for us we have to recognize this for a religion. That's what it is. It's based on a set of presuppositions. The ideological social justice proponents, they want it to just be reality for everybody, but they do have a particular set of religious beliefs. And it's really important to call it that. They're free to believe it. They've got that freedom in our country based on our Constitution. They are not free to impose that by force or coercion on other people. And so I think Christians just have to be able to say that kind of thing when they're in those situations, I just don't believe that. I have other beliefs. I'm not going to come in here to the business and require people to read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you shouldn't require me to read Robin DiAngelo or Ibram X. Kendi. Those guys are promoting a particular religious worldview. So I think that's another way we can push back, Jeff.
Good. So I feel like I have witnessed two different kinds of pushback from Christian brothers and sisters. One is that that this is just an analytical tool. Critical race theory is an analytical tool. This is going to be helpful. Let's do it. And I feel like you've probably addressed that. So you don't need to address that right now if you don't want to. But then the other one is, what is critical race theory? What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Yeah. What do you mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not on the radar yet. And maybe in that same camp as it's not on the radar, there's the Christian saying, this is a red herring. This isn't a big deal. It should not be elevated to the level that you're making out to be. Can you speak to that camp a little bit? Am I, as a Christian, responding to this? Am I supposed to put it on their radar? Am I supposed to wake them up to it? Do I need to make it their fight too? Or is this something that, you'd mentioned not staying on the sidelines, but is this something that if it's not on my radar, it's not on my radar, and I can still live a good Christian life blissfully unaware of this?
Well, it may not be on your radar, but that doesn't mean that it isn't real and it isn't really shaping, the institutions of society. And I would argue it is. I don't think there's a doubt about that. So I think that it's important to kind of recognize it and just not deny it. Not deny that that's happening. So I do think there's a big piece of awareness that needs to happen. That part of it is because it's a worldview and because it's been kind of slowly, drip by drip, kind of coming into the culture. It's a little bit of the frog in the kettle. We're sitting in this kettle now, and we're not even hardly aware of how many of these presuppositions we've absorbed ourselves, and we don't even know the name of it.
Right.
So, awareness is really important. I have a lot of Christian friends that will try to kind of dabble, have one foot in this worldview and one foot out. That's very common. And the people like that will say, the presuppositions of ideological social justice or critical theory, they're helpful. We can use these presuppositions in terms of understanding power dynamics. So it's a tool. They like to refer to it as a tool that can be used and helpful. My problem with that is that it's more than just a tool. It really is a tool in one sense, but it's a tool that's embedded in a whole bunch of presuppositions about what it means to be human and what is power. And, those kinds of things aren't examined or they're not looked at. They're just assumed as you use this tool, if you will. So by using a tool, you're essentially opening yourself up to an entire worldview and having your thinking shaped in ways that aren't biblical. And I think that, I would simply say this, I think you're fooling yourself. If you think this is some kind of neutral tool, you're fooling yourself. You're opening yourself up to essentially a very unbiblical worldview that's probably going to end up pushing. And those two things can't coexist. Not for long. One's going to push out the other.
Yeah.
That's danger. So.
Well, we are out of time, Scott. What's your prayer for the church?
I just feel like, Jeff, this is a serious thing. It's a serious threat that we're facing right now, but it's not by accident that God has us here at this time either. And so my prayer for the church is that it would rise to the occasion, not just critique the false worldview but really use this as an opportunity to replace that with something that's so much better, and to really be champions of biblical truth in a way maybe we haven't done for generations. The only way you can drive out a bad worldview is by offering a better one. And that's my prayer for the church. We have the better one. We have it. It's God's world. It's beautiful. Good. It's true. It leads to healthy, flourishing societies. It leads to healthy, flourishing lives. We have to offer that. We can't just, we can't just critique the bad. We have to offer the good. And that means we have to know it. Maybe we have to know it in ways that we've never known it before.
Yeah.
So that's my prayer for the church. It'd be a real opportunity for the church to reconnect itself to its own story, the true story, and then offer that to the world, while at the same time challenging, not just being silent, but challenging these very dark and dangerous presuppositions.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me pray real quick. Heavenly Father, I pray a simple prayer, God, that we would know you, God, and we would know your truth, your beauty, your goodness, Lord, that we would know your will, and that we would hope that we would work to see your kingdom advance, Lord, that we would bring truth to our own being, to ourselves, that we would share it with our family, our communities, our churches, our nations, Lord, that you would be glorified. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
amen.
All right. Hey, thanks for joining us. Again, I think we're really close to getting these up on YouTube. I think the podcast is not far behind that. We're gonna figure this out real soon here. So in the meantime, you can like and share this video. You can invite people to the page, let people see it. We appreciate that. Check out disciplenations.org for more information about our organization. Go to quorumdeo.com for your free biblical worldview training. And if you want to see us,
Buy the book. Don't forget
shame
to buy
on
the book.
me. Buy the book. Amazon.com. You can get the book. There's also information on our website about that. Also on our website, there's a donate button at the top. If you want to see the DNA continue to provide resources and tools to the global church, to equip it to be God's principal agent in transforming communities and nations, blessing the nations, discipling the nations, then you can make a donation there as well. We thank you so much. We appreciate you. I think I am off next week. Scott will be here with our special guest, Tom Askell, I believe. Is that correct?
Tom Askell, exactly.
All righty. God bless.
Bye-bye.